The Doctor is going to resurrect the third Descender in Natlan when they get the last Gnosis. And the Captain is going to be there to make sure that this plan goes through by defeating the Pyro Archon in single combat. We don't even got time for an intro on this one, guys. Let's get right into this, because I had an epiphany. This wasn't a planned video that I really wanted to make, but I kind of figured out the whole plot line in Natlan, I'm pretty sure. I wouldn't even call this video a theory, I'd call it a very educated guess. Now just hear me out. We've known since day one at Genshin Impact the exact order of each region's release, and hints at the subplot of each region, as well as we've been teased a little character from each region, as you can see. Now, Natlan, we've known, is, the incandescent of Resurrection, and leakers have even suggested this as well. It's going to focus heavily on Resurrection, which is great. Back in the day, we didn't know what this meant. In each region, it was kind of a mystery, just like little vague details we get, but great. Oh, but we get to Inazuma, and Signora gets absolutely folded by the Raiden Shogun. A very reasonable theory. We're going to resurrect Last Signora in Natlan when we get there. This is still a couple years away now. Holy shit, we just played Fontaine, and Skirk just revealed that the Gnosis, those little objects that the Fatui Harbingers are literally trying to collect, that's the most important thing they're trying to get, and you're telling me that the last Gnosis they need to get just happens to be in the region that focuses heavily on Resurrection. Come on, that can't be coincidence. Now there's more dots to connect here, but hold on. The Pyro Gnosis is not the last Gnosis. What about the Cryo one? The Cryo Archon's the one that's collecting them. The Fatui work for her, so she would already have her own Gnosis. The game has not suggested that her Gnosis got stolen from her, so I'm pretty sure her Gnosis would have been the first one they got. You have now the most important mission of the Harbingers. Natlan is the last Gnosis you need to get, and not just from any Archon, the God of War. We know, Nouvelet already told us that Capitano is throwing his hat in the ring. The strongest Harbinger is going to be there. And it is not abnormal for Harbingers to be more than one in one region. We just had Child in Arlecchino, and in Sumeru we had Il Dottore in Scaramouche, and in the region before that we had La Signora in Scaramouche. And actually in Liyue we had Signora and Child, so having two Harbingers in a region isn't abnormal. Now I really think that Dottore is going to be there, as well as the secondary Harbinger working behind the scenes to resurrect the third Descender. It can't be a coincidence that the theme of Resurrection being in Natlan just happens to be the last Gnosis you need. It makes perfect sense. And remember, each region's release has been in systematic order since day one. I don't think it's a coincidence that Natlan happens to be the last Gnosis and the region of Resurrection. Now why Dottore? Well, what other Harbinger would you send for this quest? Think about it. If you were the Fatui or the Tsaritsa, who would you send on this most important mission of phase 1 of your whole plan? Yeah, you'd send your two biggest guns, the brains and the brawn. And his whole experiment with Scaramouche trying to turn him into a god was just that, an experiment. That's why he didn't seem so upset when it didn't pan out. Like he told Nahida, why should I be mad with the results of an experiment? I think that was kind of like a test run. He needed to do some research, but ultimately everything he does is for this purpose, to resurrect the third Descender, which is why the Fatui are so adamant about getting each Gnosis. That's the whole purpose of their entire organization, and each Harbinger plays a really key role in this, whether it be Pantalone, the richest guy in Teyvat, funding everything, whether it be the Rooster, who is the mayor of Shesnaya and is the commander of the military, or even Arlecchino, who supplies the military with loyal soldiers as orphans. Each serve a role, and this is the Doctor's entire purpose, to resurrect this third Descender all along. So of course, who else would they send? This is their biggest mission. We know the most important thing to the Fatui are these Gnosis that happen to be the remains of the third Descender. We know Natlan and Resurrection is going to be its main plot theme. You put the two of them together, and the fact that the Pyro Gnosis is the last one they need, it only makes sense to me. I don't know if I'm crazy, but that just makes perfect sense. That the Dottore would be the second Harbinger in Natlan, kind of like how Child was in Fontaine. Now let's talk about the Captain. He has to get the Gnosis. from the Pyro Archon, the god of war. Now, how does he go about doing this? There's two options. First option, and the most likely, which we'll talk about, he serves on a platter to the Pyro Archon a homemade batch Il Capitano-sized knuckle sandwich and takes it. And the second option, he defeats somebody that impresses her and takes it that way. I see that as being way less likely, and I'll explain why. Anything that we heard about these two characters that we know about, it seems like they're gonna fight each other. The Pyro Archon is a Marauton, the same warrior race as Vanessa was, a warrior race, super renowned in combat and skills that love to fight. And this particular Marauta, would rise to be the Pyro Archon out of no coincidence. So it's safe to say, being the literal god of war, not the god of contracts, not the god of wisdom or justice or eternity, the god of war, I do not see wanting to have a sit-down chat about her Gnosis. She's going to want to fight for it. I think that's at the very least a fair assumption to make. Now let's talk about Il Capitano, the captain, the number one guy in the Harbingers. Anything that you've heard about this guy means he's no joke. He's as strong as gods. Varka said he likes to challenge gods. Scaramouche had nothing bad to say about him, referring to him as the nigh invincible and ever righteous fearless captain. The only negative thing he said was, sometimes having that much righteousness can be somewhat of a latent danger, which means maybe you're a little bit too righteous for your own good. In other words, if there's a scenario that could be a lot easier, he'd probably rather fight it out in single combat than get help from his colleagues. I think the captain would rather die in single combat against the Pyro Archon than accept help from his fellow Harbingers. I truly believe that from everything we've heard about him. Child isn't even noticed by the captain. That's how far apart and discrepancy their power level is. And Scaramouche being a puppet of the Shogun means he must have some inkling of how powerful his creator / mother is. And if he's referring to the captain as the nigh invincible captain, and we know the captain is as strong as a god from Nahida, and he likes to challenge gods from Varka, everything points towards the both of them fighting it out, fighting for the Gnosis in single combat. How fitting for the last Gnosis that you send the strongest Harbinger, your biggest gun, to go 1v1 against the god of war. The god of war. War. That's right. That is why I truly believe they will fight. Now, why do I think the captain will win? Well, I don't know their power levels, but from what we heard, it's not out of the realm of question that he's definitely on par. And we know the Fatui always get the Gnosis, because that's literally what drives the plot forward. So, if the Fatui always get the Gnosis, that's just part of the plot, and all dots connect to them fighting from what we know in game, then it just makes sense to assume that the captain is going to defeat the Pyro Archon in 1v1 combat, take the Gnosis, give it to Dottore, and let him do his work. His tests with Scaramouche and throughout the years have all been in preparation for this task. The entire theme of Natlan and its story quest, resurrecting the third Descender. Now, this third Descender, I don't know if they're going to be completely intact or aware of their being resurrected. Like, are they going to be resurrected as they were, or is it going to be like a zombified, crazy version? I don't have any idea about that. But one thing I can assume is that the Fatui Harbingers aren't going to resurrect somebody super powerful that's going to be a loose cannon or a liability. They haven't spent so much time and energy and all of the resources they've been doing everything to get these Gnosis to resurrect this person. They're not going to do it unless they have some sort of way of controlling them, or at least knowing who they are and if they're going to be a use to them. So at the very least, I think it's possible that they already know the identity of this third Descender, and they already seem to know exactly what they need to do with them. Otherwise, they'd be resurrecting someone that could just be off the rails and they have no control over. I don't think that they're that uncalculated, and they're sending, potentially, their two biggest guns to get this done. At least we know their biggest gun's going to be there, and I really don't see any Harbingers more fit than Dottore to make this resurrection happen. Call me crazy, but does this not make a ton of sense? Or am I just overthinking it at this point? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Also, I'd like to quickly touch on one subplot that we might see. It is even possible that we see Columbina in Natlan as well, acting as a sentry for Dottore to do his experiments, being the third strongest Harbinger, so having your 3 strongest guns in there would also make sense as well. Again, that's pure speculation though. But you know who else I think might show up? Scaramouche, because he has a grudge match and revenge to cause to Dottore, so I think he's going to cause a headache for these experiments. While the captain's off fending off the Pyro Archon, I think Scaramouche is going to try to interrupt Dottore in setting up for this resurrection. I think it's possible because we know that Scaramouche has it out for the Doctor, and he wants blood. So we might possibly see the Wanderer back again. Again, this part is just a subplot and a theory of mine, because we do know that he does want revenge on the Doctor, and what better way to do it than to interrupt his biggest experiment and grandest plan yet. Of course, let me know in the comments. So to summarize everything we've talked about, Natlan, it's been heavily leaked and hinted from game, and basically stated Resurrection will be a huge plot point in Natlan. Natlan has always been the last region with the last Gnosis that's been predetermined since day one. The third Descender, the very things the Fatui have been trying to collect all along, the one thing they want, the remains of the third Descender, and it just happens to be the last piece they need in Natlan, the nation focusing around Resurrection, and Dottore being the most logical choice of the secondary Harbinger in this quest to make this happen. That's basically all I'm suggesting, and the captain taking down the Pyro Archon in single combat, finally completing phase 1 of the Fatui's grand plan of collecting each Gnosis after years of playing this game in a huge climax to finish off phase 1. That is what I'm suggesting, but again, let me know in the comments what you think. Yes, the Tsaritsa has her own Gnosis, so the Pyro one is the last one they need to collect. And 2, about the Pyro Archon, the captain fighting, well, we can discuss that in the comments if you like. That is just the most likely scenario that I can come up with based off of these 2 characters and what they're all about. I don't know, I don't see the God of War negotiating, and I don't see the captain doing it either from what we heard. But who knows? At the end of the day, this is just my biggest educated guess that I can come up with, because everything just makes sense to me when it comes to this. But on that note, thank you so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe and support the channel if you want to see more content like this. I do appreciate it. And as always, we will see you all in the next one. Later.